Welcome back to another episode of Let's Grab Coffee. Today we have a special guest, a good friend, I would say a leader that a lot of people know in Chicago, Michael Fassnacht. I appreciate you doing this. Good morning.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me on your show. And I thought you didn't send any coffee over. I was expecting like a mobile coffee order, but I'm sure it's coming.
I was gonna say, where's your cup? I have mine. It's always handy. You know, we always take
I'm
a
an,
good first sip.
I'm an early guy, so I woke up at 5, worked out, went to my coffee shop in the neighborhood. So I'm all good, ready
So
to
you're,
go.
you're doing it right. Well, welcome. I'm very excited to do this. I've been wanting to have you on for a very long time. For folks who don't know, Michael formerly is the Chicagoland president and the chief growth officer for Clayco, which is a full-service turnkey real estate development company. They do everything from master planning, architecture, engineering, construction. So a huge presence. I would say informally, the way I would describe you, when I think of Michael Fassnacht, especially having been in Chicago for 6 years, is really a civic leader, in Chicago. I would say someone who's extravagant at community building, who's given a lot to the city in many different ways, both in the public and private sector. And someone I would say personally I've admired, having worked in growth roles, that's been sort of a really good compass, let's say, as to how you actually grow presence in new markets, especially in Chicago, and how you can do that while giving back to the city. So I just wanted to tell you, I've always admired that about you.
Oh, they're very kind words. Really appreciate this very kind introduction.
Now, if people didn't already pick it up, I want to bring you back to your German roots, which is where you were born. I don't know where in Germany, actually. I don't think I've ever asked you.
So I was born in the southwest part of Germany, which is Baden-Württemberg, like 2 hours straight south of Frankfurt.
Okay.
Called Baden-Baden, so the Black Forest, and that's where I grew up. And did not know how beautiful it was when I grew up there. So I go back at least once a year to see family. So I'm still following everything in Germany very closely.
Nice. And so how long did you spend in Germany in total?
So I mean, I was always a big traveler. So I lived in Africa for 3 years, worked there for the Lutheran Church as a missionary, which most people don't know.
Really?
I met my wife in 1992 when I was an exchange student at UC Irvine. We got married a couple years later, and then we had a long distance marriage for almost 5 years where I worked at Lufthansa at Frankfurt, finally running their frequent flyer program globally. And she was a professor at Penn State. And then we moved together because we thought it might be helpful to live together when you want to start a family. And then we moved to San Francisco in 2000. So I've been in this country for 25 years.
Okay, wait. There's a big fun fact there that I didn't even know about, which is the Lutheran Church part. So how did that come about? Like, is that something you wanted to do early on? What was?
It's a good question. So in Germany back then, you had to do after high school, it's like something like Israel, you had to do either military service or social service.
Mm,
I chose soul service. I did it for a year. And then I liked it so much, I just extended. And it gave me, I think great insight into, it was mostly in Cameroon, a little bit South Africa, but in the heart of Africa. And gave me this perspective how people are challenged all over the world to build kind of their economic lives and how blessed we are in Germany as well in the United States. So I think sometimes we lose the sense of gratitude.
mm.
We all think we are so brilliant, and that's why we're successful. A lot of times it's the context we're living in, and we're just fortunate to be born in a time and a space that enables us to have great careers. Not everyone has that.
Yeah, it's true. How lucky we are to even just have the platform. I mean, it's literally based on where you're born, essentially, and the country and the resources you have, right?
And then I learned in Chicago, similar, the zip code you live or you're born in
True.
determines to a large degree your future and your economic prosperity and your life expectancy. And so things are one of the reason I think why I'm very passionate to look at all 77 neighborhoods in Chicago.
How much did the missionary work actually impact your civic mindset moving forward? Because I feel like you're one of the few, I know there's many leaders in Chicago who share that, but one of the few folks I know who really knows how to blend both the business and the civic duties together, and you do it naturally. And so I'm just wondering how much of the missionary work impacted that down the road.
I think the missionary work was probably two things I learned. First, I just love to get to know new people from all walks of life. I just so it's very selfish almost. Missionary, you meet a lot of amazing people that you would never meet if you just stay in your lane.
Mm,
And secondly, I think we all have sort of people who are blessed to have grown up in Germany, middle class family with a great family to give back. And whenever we leave this planet, leave the planet slightly better than when we came here. I think that's just an obligation that we all have, independent if you're a Christian or believe in a God.
mhm.
I think this is just one of the purposes that we all should live and embrace.
Love that. Before we continue, maybe last question on this is, would you consider yourself a spiritual person, a religious person today?
I think more a spiritual person than a religious person.
Mm.
I do have this strong belief you need to have a purpose to make the world around you better. And this world can be very small, it can be just your family and your friends and family, or can be just the neighborhood block or your city. I don't have any national ambition. So I think it makes your life richer,
Mm.
gives you meaning, and I just enjoy it. So
Love that. Yeah, it's sort of removing yourself from the center, I think, is what spirituality can give, and which is why it's associated with humility. Sort of reducing the ego from your world, which a lot of it's very difficult to do at times, and so I like that. I like that response. Moving forward, so you end up going back to Germany right after missionary work?
no, yeah, so yeah, I finished my college studies, worked at Lufthansa in Frankfurt, and then I moved in 2000 to San Francisco, started my own company, like a marketing tech company, and was the founding CEO, and was fortunate enough to sell it in 2005 to Oracle. And then one of my key clients was a big Chicago leader in the advertising marketing world, Howard Draft.
Hmm.
And he always wanted to hire me for back then was one of the largest advertising agencies in the world. It was Footgun and Belding, Draft FCB. And so in 2006, almost reluctantly, my wife and I and our two young kids, we moved to Chicago. And then we fell in love with the city, the day we arrived. And so I worked at the agency world for almost 13 years, the last 10 years as the CEO here in Chicago
Hmm.
with over 1,000 employees, a great journey, a lot of learnings. I was not an ad guy. I was more like a strategy marketing guy, and got then much more civically engaged in Chicago, like 2014, 2015, joined a few nonprofit boards. And then I got even more involved when you might remember that when the big Amazon HQ2 competition was going on, and then Mayor Rahm Emanuel and his deputy mayor, Bob Rifkin, called me, hey, can you pro bono help from your agency and strategy background to pitch the city of Chicago to Amazon? So I worked on this pro bono for like almost with the big team at FCB for a year and got to know a lot of people and learn how to kind of sell and promote the city.
Well, thank you for that overview because your background certainly is quite extensive, I would say, and very impressive. And I have certain questions along the way in your chapters. Before we get to the US real quick, what I really wanted to ask is for a lot of folks listening, when they think of, let's say, German work culture, aside from the personal life, at least when I think of German work culture, I think of punctuality, I think of directness, which is sometimes a little bit different from North America. And I also think about, work people hear about work-life balance in Europe. So as someone who's worked in Europe versus the US, just some maybe can you give us like a map of what's different, what you enjoyed there versus here, or maybe what you didn't?
I mean, I think one of the reasons why I came and moved, I'm dual citizen now, so I saw my German passport, I become American citizen in 2017. What I love about this country, I think the entrepreneurial
Mm.
attitude, the risk taking, the focus on innovation, the embracing of other people. I mean, I became the first chief marketer of the city of Chicago as a guy who was born in Germany with an accent. In Germany, I don't think an American would become the CMO of a large US city, a German city. So I liked always the openness, the welcoming nature. I like to work a lot. I like to work. Germans like to work and they're not. So they're very regimented.
And
I
then
mean, I think one of the reasons why I left as well, I think I was too funny for Germany. They kicked me out. And I'm not a car guy. I'm not a beer guy. So there were three strikes against me.
there's not much left.
There's not much left. So, but I do like. I think I think the German work culture. I think is very direct, very honest. I think very ethical in most
Mhm.
cases. So I had a great. I had some few mentors. First, during my college time, I worked at a manufacturing company in my town, and I got to know the CEO and owner really well. They were one of my first mentors, who I admired a lot. And then at Lufthansa, I had a few mentors, so who I learned a lot from. So I was always very fortunate throughout my career to have mentors who I looked up to, who can learn from.
Mm.
And I think also now it's time for me to maybe become a mentor for a few other young people that I'm trying to.
Yeah, very processed. Also, I love the operational mindset of Germans.
Very yes, yes. But I think the challenge, if you look at the economy the last 10 or 20 years, the challenge is twofold. I know German economy relied too much on export to China and cheap Russian gas. Both has under threat or gone. And I think the economy is no challenge to how to kind of reinvent itself and how to grow again. So
Hmm. Love that. Well, you end up. It's always interesting to me as someone who also immigrated, in my case, to Canada. I always love immigrant stories, and what I like to actually understand is why did you pick Silicon Valley? How was the process of moving from Germany to the U.S., especially in like you were there in the early 2000s, I believe, right? Like the dot com,
yeah, yeah.
and it's hard enough to move to a new country. You also, for some beautiful reason, you decide to also start a business. I mean, these are two very hard things to do, regardless. So just like walk me through that. Why Silicon Valley? Why start a business? How was the move for you? How did you integrate?
So I think San Francisco was because was one choice was geographically because of my wife. She's from LA. So we always loved California. That was perfect. And then like it is the entrepreneurial center globally. So I thought, hey, if you want to make it somewhere, it's go there. And I was, I had the crazy ambition and thought, right, let's just try it. And we like San Francisco. I think it's a beautiful city. So I think that was very true, simple reason. There was not that much thought put into it. And just try it. You have to be adventurous, you have to take risks. And it worked out. And I learned a lot, but it was tough because we had to build a company. I had two other co-founders. I became the key salesperson, with Max and not understanding all the work culture. And we had a team then. We didn't raise money at the beginning, so you have to know you have to close a sale to fund the payroll. So a lot of pressure, but I think that's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's why I tell my children it's not always about, oh, this is the right path. I think you have to put yourself out there
Mm.
and just collect different experiences that shape you as a professional, as a human being. And some experiences are amazing, some experiences are challenging. There might be even some bad experiences, but ultimately they're all collectively shape of who you are. And people who don't put themselves out there, who don't collect new experiences, don't grow.
Yeah, very well said. Well, for you, it's interesting because your first chapter was as an entrepreneur, and then you ended up joining larger corporations where you brought that entrepreneurial mindset to help grow the businesses. Curious, what did you learn about yourself as a founder or as a co-founder in that case?
I think the founder, I think, was a better salesperson than I thought,
Nice.
because a sales is nothing else as connecting with the human being and telling a story. It's
Mm.
nothing else. I think sales is all about connecting on the human level as well as having a story to tell. That's sales. I learned that and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than I thought. I think second, I think I was pretty good at inspiring people, kind of strategic, but also done on a day to day. I think I learned my people skills there. I think that's the two things. And yeah, I do like taking risk and I do like to take the road less traveled, I would say.
It's a great book, by the way. Isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. It's funny when we talk about connection. I don't know if you've ever read. There's it's a I guess a little less known sales book. It's called the Little Red Book of Sales. I think I have it
Mhm.
here actually. Yeah, Little
I
Red.
didn't read, I know, I heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, Jeffrey Gitomer, and he has a quote in there. It's if nothing else from the book, one of my favorite things from it. It's one page, just one quote, and it's basically it says that a sale will earn you a commission, and a friendship will earn you a fortune. And I think in sales, that's how I've always regarded it in terms of how you're putting it, like building meaningful relationships, seeing someone really as a friend, not just a connection,
Mm.
like taking the transaction out of it, and
Yeah.
how can I see it from Michael's point of view, and can I be genuinely curious about Michael's life, and how can I be of service to Michael?
I think that's the people misunderstand that sales means selling. I was like, no, sales means listening.
Hmm.
And I think because only if you listen, like you just said, understand what is the other person's end goal, ambition, desire, challenges. Only if you understand that, then you can shape the solution for them. I always like, when I go on business development meetings or stuff like, normally I always tell afterwards the team, we all talk too much. We have to listen more. So.
Is that something that helped? Because I always, whenever I talk to, including myself, growing in my career, I did struggle at times with whether it's imposter syndrome or a little bit of anxiety, like just anxiety of pressure, maybe pressure in the moment. Hence why I have, Michael Jordan 6 seconds versus Yuzo. It reminds me of how to stay calm under pressure. It's a good, like, I guess, reference. Growing up in your career, how did you deal with pressure?
So it's a good question. I worked 6 years at Lufthansa, which is a very German, very structured company, a lot of pressure, a lot of smart people.
Mm.
And, I was early on leading on some big projects and I was not fully successful. A lot of pressure and Germans don't mind to call you out in front of 50 people and dress you down. So I think I learned my key thing was two learnings. One is I always try to tell myself, what is the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing is you have a bad meeting, and the worst thing is you lose your job. And I'll find another job. I'll be fine. This is the worst thing that can happen. If you think like that, I think it gives you a lot of freedom. And second one is what I learned early on, which probably in the 90s was not as popular, but talk about mental health. I always learned I will never give power over my emotional well-being to any corporation or any leaders in a corporation. So I repeat, I will never give power over my emotional well-being to a company or to someone who works in a company. It's going to be sometimes challenging, but you always remind yourself because sometimes if you give a corporation or other company that power, that space, I think it does not make you as good as a professional. It doesn't give you the freedom to think clearly, to be ambitious, to be bold. I think that's very important.
Can I ask, this is actually personally, how do you regulate that emotion? Like, how do you have that healthy separation from the self, like your personal brand versus the company, when you're also in roles that you are identified with the company? especially in your case, like you've been in growth roles that are associated with the growth of the business in Chicago. And so when someone thinks of or thought of WBC in the past, it was Michael and Abin. And now when people think of Clayco in Chicago, they think of Michael and team, right? So it's easy to say that we can separate mentally, but how do you actually do that?
I think, first of all, you're right. I represent the company. I'm the face of Clayco. I'm really very identified with World in Chicago. I try as well to bring in my values and my behavior, how I treat other people to the company. I think I'm fortunate that at Clayco, I think it's a very respectful, very inclusive environment. But yeah, also I still have to say this is that there is still a separation between me as a human being and the company. So you do have you hope there's a big overlap in values and behavior, but there's always still the separation. I don't like this notion of, oh, the company is your family. I don't have a family. Trust me, and the family can be sometimes loving and sometimes challenging home. But it doesn't mean I treat people like they're their family. I try to help them, support them. But the company is a company. It's a
Mm.
legal entity. It's a feeling clearly as well, but it's a corporation. And then one day I might leave, or they might ask me to leave. That is just. But I never, this is my sixth company organization I work for. I never left on bad terms. I always, because ultimately a company I think owes you two things. Or an organization,
Mm.
I think they owe you a fair compensation, and they owe you that you learn something while you work at the company. So they help you to grow professionally. That's the two things they owe you. So when one day a company decides, oh, maybe it's time for you, not the right fit anymore, you should be thankful. If they paid you fairly and they helped you to grow professionally, that's what they owe you. They don't owe you lifelong employment.
Mm.
No, they don't.
It's very good perspective. I think that's what I like from this whole topic that we're on, is your framing is very healthy. Like how you level set life, I think is probably one of the most underrated things someone can actually do for their mental health while they're in high pressure jobs. Is
The thing
right?
I learned in advertising, but we call it if you do like a marketing work, so it's all about mental models.
Mm.
Mental models help us to deal with complex situations. They shape us. So I always try to like, what is the frame? What is the mental model for this particular situation? That's how we make decisions. If you look at behavioral economics, all the research, it's a fast decision, but most of our decisions, 99% of decisions, are instinctual, all driven by mental models that we learned for a long time.
Mental models. That is the marketing in you, my friend.
That's true.
So you go from being an entrepreneur and then you join one of the largest advertising companies in the world, FCB. Excuse me, FCB, and you're there for quite some time.
Yeah, 13 years. So
13 years.
first 3 years as the global head of strategy, and then 10 years of the president here in Chicago.
Global head of strategy to president.
It's a long time to be. I was the
I was gonna say,
Yeah, 10 years as a CEO is a long time. I was the third longest tenured CEO, and the agency is 150 years old. So
wow. That's actually what I was gonna shout out as impressive because even before the CEO, the strategy roles in general, as you know very well, just like CMO roles, the tenure are usually short for a reason. Like they want fresh blood, innovative ideas. You're as soon as you're in that role, you have 60 days to bake a plan and execute. There's no, it's not like you can be there for. So how did you manage to stay in those roles for that long and actually help the company grow? I mean, first time and really in C-suite for you, I would say
yeah,
in a corporation versus
yeah.
your own business.
I think probably a few things. I mean, one, I do believe hard work matters.
Mm.
I mean, you work hard, you work long hours, and you're always away. I'm 24/7 available for clients or for if it's at FCB, if it's at WBC. You work hard. I think it's just the foundation. I think second, you always try to understand where you're going long term with your organization. What are the market trends? What are the challenges? What are the matters trends you see that you want to either ride on or fight against? And so I was always in a constant re-innovation mode. So that was kind of my setup. And I think I was able to build a strong team because I'm only one small person. So for me, it was always how can I build a world-class team of the 10 or 20 people that matter? I was always fortunate to work with amazing people. So that's I think how I stayed so long in a very challenging role. And then at the end, after 10 years, I kind of the reason why I really wanted left was I thought my learning curve maxed out. So like, hey, I did it for 10 years. I'm pretty successful with it, but I want to be challenged. I want to learn. And that's why I left. Because I always believe whenever your learning, your growth, personal professional growth stalls, you should leave.
Yeah, I would agree. The one I'm gonna segue back to that in a second.
Yeah.
The one thing I wrote down when you said hard work, because I resonate a lot with that, of course, and any growth role, this is something you have to do, and it's 24/7. business development is 24/7, client service is 24/7. The one thing I kind of wrote down and circled is stamina. As soon as you said hard work, the first thing that came to my mind is stamina, because with hard work, it's also a marathon, right? It's not like a sprint. And so, how do you work on your personal stamina so that you're able to be 24/7, especially, in your stage now at your career? Someone who's a bit more tenured.
I'm pretty. I mean, one of my probably few strengths. I'm pretty disciplined, so I don't go out late at night. I don't. I don't. At Foot Bell and P made fun of me. I had business dinner starting at 5:30, latest at 6. And if the client has a guys, because some people have families, you don't have to have a dinner starting at 7:30, 8 p.m. It's just not. And the funny thing, I've been doing, and make fun of you, and then that's just Michael. That's fine.
Mm.
And I will be done with dinner at latest at 8. So because I wake up at 5, I work out, I need a little thinking to think and to get ready for the day. So I always like to say I'm pretty, boring and disciplined in my daily life because the work and everything else is already so unexpected and challenging. So I need a little bit of structure in my world. So I think that helps me a lot.
Walk me through quickly your morning routine. I know you mentioned it a little bit. So you wake
I
up.
wake up at 5 and then I work out. I either go for a bike ride. This morning I went for an hour-long bike ride, or I go to the gym, or I have like kind of a home gym.
Mhm.
I became kind of an open water swimmer the last couple of years.
No way.
So I
In the
swim
lake.
in the morning, and when I'm in Los Angeles, I swim in the ocean.
Do you swim in the lake here?
Yes, a little bit, yeah. But I just started a couple of years ago. But mostly I like the ocean.
Yeah, yeah,
So I try to be once a month in LA where we have a place, and then maybe 3 or 4 days in a row, go every day out there.
got it. And then you start getting ready for work.
Yeah, and then I normally go for I like my coffee shop in Lincoln Park, Collectivos. I try to go there for like 20 minutes, read the news, check the emails, and then back, and then and the office.
Got it. You were mentioning about growing teams. I know you're talking about your personal values and your beliefs and things that matter to you. What sort of things do you look for when you're hiring someone? Like who's an exceptional person for you?
So at Football and Building, I became pretty famous. I had like 3 values that I ultimately try to live every day. First, do great work. So I want to work with people who want to do great work. Just average work is just not just a waste of time. So do great work. Second, do the right thing. We normally, unless you're a psychopath, we know what the right thing is to do. We know. We might not decide to do it, but we know what's right. And then third, be your best self. There's a big difference between your best self and be your authentic self. At work, honestly, I want your best self, not always your authentic self. There's a 10% difference, probably. Let's be honest. We're all honest. There's a 10% difference between when we're always authentic and our best.
Can you explain that a little more? Like maybe I think
No,
people are curious
because
about that.
if you're in a bad mood and you want to be authentic, I don't want your bad mood in the office. I want your best self. Or if you feel like, you're upset about something and you want to maybe yell at someone and they might be authentic to you, I don't want that at work. I think you have to be your best self. You get your voice down. So I like do great work, do the right thing, and be your best self. That was kind of my 3 values that I really try to instill every single day, as well then at Roll Business Chicago. And I hire people who are able to live through these 3 values. And I think they're pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And I can call out people if they don't, they can call out me when I'm not following these values.
Mm.
And that's how I kind of look at people. That's why I pick people.
Love it. Well, one of your, I guess, other values eventually became pro Chicago. It seems like when I heard you earlier on that it wasn't as, what's the word I'm looking for? It wasn't as prominent, I guess. Like when you were moving from Silicon Valley to Chicago, it didn't seem as exciting to you initially.
Yeah.
Is what I heard. Is that true?
Yeah. The brand Chicago is like, I mean, it's a great city, but it's in the glass. It's not as cool as the coast, not as cool as California. I mean, San Francisco was a beautiful city, and I think Chicago is a beautiful city, but it's flat. And no, I think the Midwest and Chicago doesn't have the reputation that like New York has, or that LA has, or San Francisco, or California. And then I think I had to live your experiences and the diversity, the richness of it, the beauty of it. But we continue to have a perception, a marketing challenge as a region, as a city.
And you were the CMO technically for the city of Chicago.
Yeah, I was that. So I was the first. So I joined after I did the foot gun building thing. I kind of took some time off, and then I joined Mayor Lightfoot's team in March 2020, just when COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
First as kind of like $1 a year chief marketing officer, and then a few months later, as well as in a dual role as the CEO of World Business Chicago, the economic development organization for the city. So I did both. I had an office at the mayor's office on the 5th floor, and an office at World Business Chicago.
Two questions there. What was it like working for or in the public sector for the government? Was it a big transition for you?
Say again?
Like, how was the transition of going from private to public?
Oh, it was challenging. because I think when you're a successful business person, you think you know most things, and the
Mm.
public sector is very, very, very different. So I think you have to be much more humble and try to learn, how does government work? How does a mayor's office works? How the city department works? How does it work? You work with a nonprofit organization like World Business Chicago. I didn't know that. So I think I had to learn a lot. I had some great friends and mentors and people who helped me, like Mayor Lightfoot, Samir Maika, deputy mayor.
Mhm.
So great people. And so I learned it. And clearly the pandemic was a pressure cooker situation where you failed fast and you learn fast. So I when I left now, like over a year ago, that public sector, I always try to remind business people this public sector is much more complicated than you think, and then it looks from the outside.
What did you appreciate more about Chicago? Because I know at that point, the one of the reasons I'm sure you took that role is because you were bullish on Chicago and you love the city, you want to give back. So it give you that fulfillment. But what else did you learn about the pro Chicago mantra when you were in that role?
I think the three things I learned, I got to know more neighborhoods.
Okay.
And because remember, if you're, I live on Lincoln Park on the north side, and if you're a business person like me, I mean, let's be honest, most of us don't go really south of Roosevelt, west of Ashland. We just like down neighborhoods. And by the way, this is all for all Chicagoans. Most Chicagoans, they go to max 50 neighborhoods a year. They don't live their kind of comfort zone. So I learned first that so many amazing neighborhoods. We have 77 of them. Second, I learned a lot of different people from different backgrounds, different histories, different personal biographies. And I love that. I think that just so many amazing people who do maybe one nonprofit that seems small, but there's super impactful work. So I love that. And then third, I understand more. I think the fundamentals for our city and for Chicagoland are just outstanding. If it's the academic system, diversity of economy, I think the climate resiliency, the commitment of people to the community. So I just became more, the more I understood it, how strong really the fundamentals long term are for not just the city, but for the whole region and state.
It's very special, and World Business Chicago is really a special org that I personally haven't seen. Like having lived in Toronto, many other cities in the Middle East and in North America, it's really beautiful how passionate I think they are in helping the city grow. And how much upside there is, and all of us making an impact. So I appreciate that and all the work that you did, obviously, in that role. It's not an easy one.
No, I loved it. I mean, like Rob Chicago did almost 5 years. I think it was a great organization. We grew the board a lot. We expanded our portfolio. I'm very proud that we did the Chicagoland Economic Partnership because my belief
Mm.
was more and more, it's not just about the city when you want to attract capital, talent, and companies. It's the whole region. It's you have to look at Chicagoland as one of the top super regions globally. Because one of my theses is ultimately like maybe 15 to max 20 global super regions will determine, kind of sounds big, the future of mankind, innovation, prosperity, creativity. And we in Chicagoland should be one of these top global super regions. It's not just the city alone.
So what do you think either holds it, present tense, or has held Chicago back in the past, in your view?
I think the biggest, if you look at the numbers, I think the biggest indicator for a prosperous region or city is population. And we have just not grown the population as much as we need to ensure. I mean, the city of Chicago is built for 3.5 million people. We had like in the 1950s, we had 3.5 million people. Now we have 2.7 roughly. So I think the population is always the biggest indicator for future kind of outcome. We have like a population change where we have lower income, especially African American residents leave, and more high income, Hispanic, white, Asian Americans moving in.
Mm.
And we need both. We need more influx, but we also need to make sure that the current residents stay, especially our Black communities. I think the challenges are, I think we are not growth oriented enough. We don't build enough affordable housing or housing overall. I think we'll getting into a housing crisis. We're building this next year in 27 only like 1,000 apartment units. We should build at 5,000. And that's not, we can talk about affordable units. It's just we need more housing overall. I think second, we need to be fiscally responsible across all levels of government. I think we have some challenges there. I think we're very fortunate on the whole safety perception issue. I think we have a fantastic superintendent, the Larry Snelling. So I'm very optimistic on this. So we have our challenges.
So when someone, and these are all great points that you're making, and I think it's helpful for anyone, whether in Chicago or not, just to understand how you actually, like, you use a mental model to think about a city's vibrance. If someone's hearing this and thinking like, well, Michael, that's great, but you also are super well connected, you're a C-suite leader, you were literally working for the city. What can I do? Like, I'm hearing all these things, and what can I do at the ground level? What advice would you give to that person?
So my view is always, because I got asked it quite often, like, what is your one passion point that you want to get involved with? It could be, I don't know, trees in Chicago. You want to build, there's an organization who built trees in Chicago. You might like animals. There are a lot of animals organizations. I think or you like immigration rights. Find the one thing, or you might like dance. Find the one thing that you're passionate about and get involved.
Mm.
Mostly a nonprofit organization or an organization like How About Dance Street or the Steppenwolf. Get involved, either as a member, as a volunteer, as a junior board member. Get involved and show up. The great thing I think about Chicago is if people raise their hand and want to get involved, I think it's a very welcoming city. That's what they did to me, the city. That's why I feel like it's time for me to give back. So get involved, show up. That's that simple.
It's so true. Yeah, I definitely agree with the welcoming piece. One thing that I shout out to Chicago sister cities. I chair the Toronto Chicago sister city, but that's just one example, right? As a Canadian who moved here, I'm very passionate about the cross border piece and more diplomacy between the two countries and cities. So that's one example. Just find your niche, basically. Find something whether it's in your story or something you care about. There's going to be room for volunteering in Chicago.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of opportunity.
I mean, I'm now in 7 nonprofit boards and I help other people. I think and it's fun. I mean, it's not because I want to say how great I am. I enjoy it. I like to get involved and always learn something. I think you always learn something when you get involved.
That's so true. The one thing I was talking to my wife about what I learned from sister cities, more from like I guess a managerial perspective, is that when you're part of a nonprofit, especially volunteering, and there's no financial compensation for anyone involved, the difficult part is how do you galvanize and inspire people to want to work towards the goal when they don't technically have to. That's a very different skill set when you're trying to persuade or inspire and motivate versus when you're an organization and I'm paid for it and I report to Michael. I'm obligated if I want to stay in this role. But it's very different in nonprofit. You're with a bunch of volunteers essentially, and you have to galvanize together towards this mission.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I learned as well when I joined a few nonprofit boards. Then I was leading with Wilbur Chicago nonprofit board, and I'm just always amazed. And I think it's very special about this country as well. How many people are volunteering, giving time, nights and weekends, and so I think that's why one of the reasons I think why I love Chicago.
One thing I love about your story, Michael, is you are phenomenal at industry pivots. You're like the gold standard of pivoting industries, and it's something I resonate with because I've
Yeah.
pivoted industries. What is your model? I guess I mean when you move from one, because it seems like you're using a similar playbook, one that's adaptive, but you join a real estate. You came from the city. Previous to that, you were in advertising, and before that, you started your own company.
And before that, I worked in
At airlines.
yeah. So this is my 5th or 6th professional chapter. I think that the common themes is strategy, marketing, technology. I think when I kind of was in the process of leaving World Business Chicago, I just looked around and I looked at the 3 criteria really. One is place that a company organization that I respect, where I respect the leader. And then with Clayco, I got to know Bob Clark. I knew him before, who's our founder and chairman, and I'm a big fan of him. A second, where I think I can bring my skills to the table and make an impact. And then third, where the company or organization is well set up to grow and be successful. I think Clayco is a fully vertically integrated real estate company with architecture, design, engineering, construction development. I thought it was very well set up with the great leadership team to profit from, I think, the growth of building America across all sectors. So I like that. And then I wanted to learn something new. So I'm very happy. I've been a little over a year. And I always think you have to challenge yourself and learn something new, and makes you maybe a better human being and more better professional. And that's my mantra.
What's your first 30-day playbook when you join a company, especially as a C-suite?
I think it's really learning the industry and sector you're in, learning the company, and listening a lot. But it's really for me the sector, the company, and the people. You're learning all that. So the sector, whatever macro, like my Mobishi guy, I had to learn economic development, and you learn the organization and the ecosystem, and then the people. That's kind of my very simple. And I was very fortunate, Bob Clark and CEO Anthony Johns said, "Hey, take your time." This is a complicated business. Take your time. So I think I've always felt very supported on my learning journey.
Love that. I want to be mindful of your time.
Yeah. I'm getting calls here already, George. But
I know.
stop.
The last question on this
Yeah.
one. I know you're a big proponent of personal branding. For people who don't follow you, please follow Michael on LinkedIn. A lot of amazing, just personal notes, experiences. He shares a lot about Chicago and leaders within it. Why is that so important to you?
It's a good question. First of all, very simple truth. If you don't manage your brand, other people will. Because everyone has a brand. You have a brand. Everyone. Even if I don't want to have a brand, they are a brand. A brand is nothing else, again, a mental model how other people perceive you. So if I say, George, Carlif, what do people think? So you have a brand. So I don't like to give control to other people. So I like to control it, or at least not control, but at least influence it and try to drive it. That's that simple. And in today's world, I think you have to think like a publisher. So if you want to steer your brand, develop your brand, where do you publish? Is it in events? Is it one-to-one? Is it LinkedIn? Is it wherever? Everyone chooses different paths. But I think everyone is a leader nowadays. You have to think like a publisher.
Love it. You're a busy man. You're an inspiring leader. You give a lot to the city. Michael, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure every listener will as well.
Thank you, Josh. Thanks for everything you do, and I'm glad that you have your show here.
Thank
You
you.
have a great day, George.